The court battle between state-owned asset manager, the Public Investment Corporation's 4.2 billion rand investment in IT group AYO Technology Solutions has now reached a settlement through a mediated deal. The matter was heard by the Western Cape High Court. That's where the PIC was seeking to recoup billions of rands on behalf of the Government Employees Pension Fund. This finding by the court circles all the way back to when the deal had its genesis around 2017, and it's been a controversial partnership, well reported in the news. For what this means and for what's next for AYO, Chairman Adv Wallace Mqoqi joins me now. Wallace, good evening to you and welcome. Your reaction to the court finding this week?
Good afternoon, Iman and the viewers of SABC 4. Our reaction certainly is one of elation, one of rejoicing, one of joy, for having reached this point in the conflict that has characterized the relationship between AYO and the PIC. So it's a welcome development.
I mean, it's interesting, those adjectives that you use, because given, the coverage around this deal and what's transpired since, and we'll get into some of the detail around what's left in terms of that original PIC settlement, some would say your counterparts in this deal are not as happy as you are. Have you had any communication with your counterparts in the PIC? And certainly you're going to be walking a little bit more of the journey in future as they try and recoup further money out of this.
Yeah, well, certainly we have not had an engagement after the agreement was reached and the matter was submitted to court for Judge Binsworth to make it an order of court. But right. Certainly our sense is that both parties are committed to working together into the future, the sole purpose being to grow the value of the business. To grow the value of the business. Yeah, and that's certainly what we are bent on doing.
My sense, though, in reading all of this, and again, you can push back on that, is that the reason the PIC would want to grow it is because they want to try and get more of their money back. You'll recall it was a controversial deal, and there's little left of the PIC's 4.3 billion rand investment. And here's some context for our viewers. The PIC buying almost 30% of AYO shares in 2017 on behalf of the Gauteng employee pension scheme. There was that dramatic fall in AYO's share price. I think it plummeted all the way down, at least 85% of the estimations, to around 420. Luckily for the PIC, the settlement agreement sees AYO paying around 20 rand a share. So it is a huge loss for the pension scheme, wouldn't you say? Estimated, I believe, at around 2.5 billion rand. What's your message to the investor and those pension holders?
Well, Iman, I think you will appreciate that in any conflict, there are, there's destruction and there are damages that are suffered. And that is precisely the reason why in any conflict, it is important for the parties at some point, to put the stones, at least one party to put the stone down and say to the other party, let us talk. Because had it not been for that, we would still be, engaged in that conflict. And that conflict is actually also fueled by those who would want to see the conflict continuing, as certainly some of them are fuming, actually, that a settlement has been reached. And that point, we cannot go back from there. And of course, we anticipate that they will still continue to try and even to torpedo, the settlement agreement that has been reached by the parties by finding one way or another of destroying it. And we're seeing that as certainly from AYO's point of view. And by the way, as a director of AYO and also as chairman, I represent all shareholders. Let it be on record that AYO has more than 2,000 shareholders, and it's not just PIC and AYO. There are many shareholders that day. So we have also a fiduciary duty, in fact, to look after the interest of all those shareholders. And we are very, glad that we have reached this point, and our commitment is that now we must hold hands and build the value. In fact, we could even build it to a point a level that far exceeds, the initial, capital that is not impossible. If there is a spirit genuine spirit of collaboration between the parties. You know, I like what I saw when I visited the United Nations headquarters in New York, where in their building they say there's an inscription there that says, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks." And I want to believe that this is exactly what we as AYO and PIC have done, to decide, to, beat our plowshares. And
I want to come back to this point, though, Wallace, if I may. And, we're always disadvantaged in interviews where we have very little time to try and really get to the meat of things. I hear what you're saying. There are people who are not so happy that this resolution has been reached, and they would be sniping in the background. The reality is, though, that when, as has been reported, and I think was stated in court by the PIC around this positive misrepresentation of, the real value of this deal, one gets the sense that they feel that they had the wool pulled over their eyes with regard to this deal. What do you say about that?
Well, we have always maintained from the very beginning that this was a good deal. And incidentally, the very head of the PIC, actually in his last words, in the witness box, confirmed that this was a good transaction. And so anyone who's going behind that, that can only be arising out of doing mischief, no more than anything. And this is the negative publicity really is the one that caused from the very beginning this deal to be derailed. Had it not been for that, we would have been far down the road, in building the projected results at the time in the pre-listing, statement. But that did not happen precisely because spokes were thrown into the wheel.
So what happens now, Wallace? Given the backdrop, what are your future plans? Are you at risk of bankruptcy? And as I said in the beginning, of course, it's in the PIC's interest to walk the longer journey so they can recoup more of their losses through what's happened. But where do you stand tonight? Are you at risk of bankruptcy?
No. We are absolutely far from bankruptcy. This arrangement has been made in such a way that we were able to settle with the PIC and also be able to help assist with the cooperation, of course, of the PIC in building value in the businesses. And this is the path that we want to follow. We're nowhere near, a threat of bankruptcy.
All right.
Far from it. In fact, we are confident that with us and the PIC holding hands, including approaching the banks that even went as far as closing our bank accounts, it will go a long way towards regaining the confidence of the market to a point where people will give us a chance to do what we are saying we want to do. We're going to keep our eye on the ball. As a golfer, I know the benefits that accrue from keeping your eye on the ball. That is exactly the attitude we're going to take from now going forward.
AYO Chairman, thank you for talking to us. Advocate Wallace Mqoqi, thank you very much for your time.